Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. We are back with another week of off-season content. How are you doing, Ryan? It's good to be back.
It's good to be back, and I hope it's not too long of an off-season. It's been fun doing everything that we've been doing, but I miss the episodes themselves, Dylan.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be possibly a longer off-season than we even anticipated, so let's hope that they figure something out, because this is pretty brutal.
You know what? Like Jeff said, at least they're determined to come back. They're focused on doing everything they can to get our favorite show back on the air. So we just got to cross our fingers and hope for the best.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have some news to get into here before we get everything started. So Hef has been in and out recently. He's been pretty busy. He's starting up a new job. He's moving in a couple months. So for the foreseeable future, Hef is taking a leave of absence. We don't know where this is going to go in the future, but thank you to Hef for all his contributions. You know, me and him started up the podcast right at the beginning of season 39 from our college apartment. And just thank you to Hef for all his contributions, because without him, there would be no Soul Survivor podcast. And I hope he comes back to join us, even if it's like a year from now.
No, I totally agree. Hef obviously brings a lot of energy to the show, some controversial opinions. He's always a great personality. I was glad to be able to podcast with him. And yeah, I wish him the best. I know he's heading to Exile Island right now, but I'm hoping he comes back at some point, even if it's for like a one-off podcast. But no, wishing him all the best.
Yeah, Hef's on the edge of extinction right now.
I'm sorry, he's on EOE. He's
on the edge. We don't know when that challenge to get back in the game is going to be.
That's actually a really good comparison.
Yeah, but so getting to tonight's topic. So we were supposed to do a different podcast tonight. That got scrapped last minute. So we decided, based on a great suggestion from the fans, I'm going to shout him out right now. His name was Liam. He suggested that we do top Survivor moves in history. So we said, you know what? Sounds like a great idea. So we took the top 20 moves we took what we think are the top 20 moves in Survivor history, and we ranked them. Me and Ryan kind of did this all together, and we're going to just read out our top 20 for tonight's podcast. And I'd love to hear the feedback from the fans. Everybody watching, if you're watching this late and not live, be sure to comment below what you think of our rankings, what you think we left out, what should be higher, what should be lower. I'm really excited for this.
I'm excited too. As someone once famously said, and it also was an episode title, this game respects big moves. We love to see great moves in terms of TV moments, in terms of, did it help the players get farther in the game? Was it innovative and creative? Have we ever seen it again? So I'm excited to break down 20 moves that we will always keep talking about because of how big, how strategic, or how flashy they were.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm excited to get into this. So we know that top 20, it could take a while. We're going to try not to get too deep into any moves so that we can keep it moving along, but let's get started. Let's get started right away here. And I will throw up what our number 20 is, which is Devin throws an extra vote on Dr. Mike in the final 5. Heroes, healers, hustlers. Ryan, I know you want to talk about this one.
Yes, my love for underrated player Devin Pinto deserves a second chance. This is a great move because it demonstrates how forward-thinking you have to be in Survivor. And Peridia mentions this in some of his videos. You can't just think about what you have and what you're going to do in the game. You must think about what your opponents are going to do and what they have in the game. And that lets you kind of see the game as a chessboard. So Devin basically realizes at the final 5, Chrissy has immunity. Ben might have an idol. Ryan, Chrissy, and Dr. Mike all doubt Ben has an idol because he's kept playing idols over and over again. So Devin says, you know what? If we all vote for Ben and Ben plays an idol and he votes for me, I'm going to go home. So why don't I throw a vote onto Dr. Mike as an insurance plan? And I won't throw a vote on Ryan and Chrissy because I might need their 2 votes to save me in a tie. And Ryan says, I don't think so. He doesn't have an idol. You're fine. Turns out Ben does have an idol. He plays it on himself. He does vote for Devin. And Devin throws a rogue vote to Dr. Mike. And then in the revote, Ryan and Chrissy save Devin and vote Mike out. So again, this is not obviously like one of the top 10 moves in history, but it's a really great subtle move that does not get enough credit because it shows how forward thinking you have to be.
Yeah, and just because a move is not flashy doesn't necessarily mean it's not in the top 20. I mean,
exactly.
Several players in Survivor history would not have thought the way Devin thought. And you know what? Ben has already played an idol. before. So if he pulls another Ben bomb, I could be the one going home today if I, just go with the other 4. So why not just throw a vote on somebody else just in case he votes for me? And turned out that it worked completely in his favor.
We really need like a Survivor soundboard so I can just get the Ben bomb sound of like the.
It could be a future investment. You never know what could be coming down the line. We get a soundboard in here.
Hopefully.
Yeah, but Devin was in our second chance cast. Extremely underrated player. If he wins fire making, he could have won the game. You never know.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is our number 20. So our number 19 from Ghost Island, Domenick Abate, fake idol bluff at the final 6. So this is one of my favorite moves ever, just because of the theatrics that went behind it. Now, Ghost Island was a weird season. You had everybody going to Ghost Island, a island where you find survivor relics, advantages from the future that may have that didn't work out for somebody or haunted somebody else was the reason they went home, and you had to reverse the curse. And I'm not 100% positive whose idol Dom got. I don't know if you remember this, which idol from the past he got, but he got an idol. And the way that he could successfully reverse the curse was if he used it successfully as a fake idol. And that's exactly what he did at the final 6. He, at Tribal Council, pulled out an idol and pretty much convinced everybody that he was not going home. And at the end of the day, Sebastian ends up going home. He plays it off completely perfectly. And ultimately, that Tribal Council could have been one of the reasons why he didn't win the game, because people like Donathan took offense to the way he acted. Sebastian as well. I know Sebastian was a little bit bitter because he was the one that went home there. But players didn't exactly like the way that he acted. So he got a little bit unlucky that it was a bitter jury there. But I personally thought it was an unreal move. It was something that, like he said in the past in interviews, and we spoke to him about, this kind of stuff. Like, he had to do that in order to pull off this move. He had to act like that. And I just think that it was incredible personally.
Yeah, I agree. I think you actually bring up a few good points that I want to mention. You mentioned the word theatrics and acting, and I think that's actually going to be a big part of our list. I think the jury, because they got voted out, they still want to feel a part of the game. They have a vote at the end, but until that point, they're kind of just watching and observing, and they want to feel a part of the action, especially if you look at Edge of Extinction, where they're stuck on the edge and they're bored for most of their game. They get to come to Tribal and see a show. And when Rick Devens is putting on a great show for people, it makes them want to vote for him. Now, like you said, if you don't do theatrics the right way and you're a little bit too cocky, you might lose some respect and some votes, where Dom loses Kellee and Sebastian's votes in that Tribal, but he still does a good job showcasing his game to the jury. So I do think theatrics is a really big point. Also, to answer your question, I'm pretty sure the real idol he had was Andrea's from Caramoan that she went home with. Mm-hmm. And I think the fake idol he bluffed with was the one that David made for Jay. I'm pretty sure those were his 2 idols. Right. Yeah. Right. But no, I do agree. I think it was a really great move. Again, really great bluff by Dom. I think to be a great player, you need to know when to obviously lie, but also bluff with what you have. And I also think that this move had a lot of other moving parts, Dylan, because, this is the Tribal where Angela comes to Dom before Tribal and says, Seabass has an extra vote, and he's going to use it tonight to take you out. And Dom goes, well, I don't want that to happen, but I want to save my idol for a guaranteed final 5 play. So if I bluff, maybe I can make sure I'm safe. And he bluffs properly, and Seabass doesn't even play the extra vote. So it was a really great move. Yeah,
I mean, again, like the fact that they bought that it was a legit idol and still didn't vote him just to test him is like just a testament to how good Dom was with this move. It was completely perfect. Mm-hmm. All right, so the next move that I will talk about, number 18, and this could be a controversial one. We spoke about this before, Ryan, but I think it's extremely forward thinking. Number 18, Spencer blindsides Fishbach in Cambodia. So there's a lot of reasons why I'm huge on this move. And well, ultimately you think of it like, I know Spencer got no votes at the end, but he did end up in the end. Okay. So that's the first thing. Second of all, even if Fishbach did not look like a huge threat on TV, he's still Steven Fishbach. Him and Spencer are probably 2 of the smartest players ever to play this game. So the fact that Fishbach had an extra vote, used an extra vote to split votes, and then Spencer took advantage of that in order to take out Fishbach is just, I think it's completely next level. And yeah, I think, a lot of people say that they thought that there were other bigger threats left in the game, such as Kellee Wentworth, and that Fishbach should not have been the vote here from Spencer. But I think that Fishbach would have been a bigger threat, would have been a big threat eventually to Spencer anyway. So I think that getting rid of him was the right move here.
Yeah, no, I think it was a really good move. Also, to answer Tanner's comments in the chat, we will read the comments at some point. We do want to get some honorable mentions and some moves that you think we didn't mention at the end of the podcast. So we will be addressing some of those moves. I actually do think that Mike Holloway move was actually really cool and entertaining and shows Mike's strategic chops past his physical game. But we'll get to the comments as, they pertain to the moves that we're talking about, but also we'll get to them at the end as well. But thanks for the input. But
yeah. Anybody in the comments right now, we are going to get to all moves in the comments after or when they come up in the rankings. So
yeah,
keep commenting and we will get to them at the end.
Yeah. I mean, I think you summarized the Spencer move pretty well. It's interesting, Dylan, because I think it's good from the sense that Spencer notices, from Fishbach winning the reward and taking Jeremy and Tasha, Spencer's very perceptive. He picks up on the fact that, I'm kind of out of the loop of this core group. I mean, obviously we all have a big alliance. Keith's in here, Kimmy's in here. We want to get out the witches' coven, which is, Abby and Cirie and Wentworth, like the three outsiders. And Spencer realizes I might be in the group, but I'm not in the inner circle. So how do I move into the inner circle? Well, if I take out Fishbach, I become Jeremy's right-hand man. Maybe I can beat Jeremy at the end. And I think it was good from that perspective. The only part where I feel like Spencer, and granted, you could point to Spencer's somewhat lack of a social game in that moment, but I think that also you have to realize that even though Fishbach is a threat, when Fishbach gets saved by Jeremy at the final 10, when Jeremy plays the idol on him, the jury's going to say if Fishbach gets to the end, especially if he's there with Jeremy, you're only here because Jeremy saved you. So some people in the comments, and I was talking to Dylan about this before the show, I was kind of, just looking at these moves. I was kind of refreshing my memory, kind of seeing what people's perceptions were. And some people perceived that, hey, maybe he should have taken out Jeremy or a bigger threat here instead of Fishbach. And I do think that's a good point. But I also think it was a good move to try to move himself into the inner circle because technically you can't, Dylan, you would agree, you can't win the game unless you're there. So Spencer was trying to make a move to get there.
And I mean, he ends up getting to the end. So it worked. And being in the inner circle is so important. I mean, I don't want to spoil moves coming up, but we did just see that this past season with a player that won the game. So, in terms of voting players out to get further into an inner circle or to eliminate the other person in the circle. So, yeah, I mean, I personally thought that just this 4-3-2 vote was just brilliant strategy by Spencer, truly.
Yeah.
And, I know that there's other moves that people think of when they think of the season, other tribal councils, but this was great as well. So wanted to make sure we get that in there.
Mm-hmm.
So for the next one that Ryan will talk about, number 17, the Davids do a minority split and blindside John in David versus Goliath.
Listen, I love a good minority vote split, and it's tough because we don't see it that often. Usually when people have the minority versus the majority, they try to do, let's try to flip somebody to our side. Let's play an idol. But, there's times where the majority can't split the votes. There's times where the majority says, okay, we have 7, they have 3, we'll do a 4-3 split, and then we can try to take them out by flushing an idol. And that's possible. But there's times where the numbers don't allow them to split the vote and they have to put all their votes onto one person. So this is where we see great strategic players like James Lim in Ghost Island, and also like we'll see here, Davey, Nick, and Christian in David versus Goliath. We see great strategic players say, if we do a minority split where we know all the votes are coming onto one of us, we'll split our votes even though we're in the minority and we'll get somebody out. And this is what James does in Ghost Island, where basically they take out Morgan after realizing that the Navidi is going to turn on their own. They take out Morgan. But I think this is a better move. I think this is more great for TV, and it happened post-merge, so it's, more well-known in, the Survivor legacy. Basically, all the Goliaths are going to vote for Christian, and Nick learns from Alec, and Alec's trying to play double agent, that all the votes are going to go on to Christian, and he tells this to Davey, and Davey keeps quiet about his idol and says, I'm going to save Christian, But you know what? If we all vote for Angelina, who's an easy scapegoat, then there become no votes. And that's like a no vote tribal. What do? So they say we'll throw 2 votes on Angelina to be safe, and we'll put 3 votes on Jon, and Jon goes home. It's a great usage of the minority splits.
Yeah, and I mean, Nick, Davey, and Christian end up voting for Jon here, and then Gabby and Carl end up voting for Angelina. Angelina uses her idol, so she's safe. Christian is safe from the Davey idol, and then it's a 3-0 vote. Jon goes home, the mayor of Slamtown. So I mean, just brilliant play by probably 3 of the best. I mean, arguably the 3 best players in the season. I know Angelina is definitely up there. Mike White's up there, but Davey, Nick, and who am I leaving out? Davey, Nick, and who's the other vote here?
For Christian?
Christian. Yeah. Okay. Davey, Nick, and Christian, right. And then Gabby and Carl also in that alliance. So really great move. I know that this is one of people's favorite tribal councils from the New School era, just in general. Just a lot going on. Really genius move. Well,
as a quick side note, the last thing I'll say about this is that I think it's an even better TV move because we as the audience had no idea what was happening. We knew that they were going to try to do a minority split, but they never told us who it was going to be between Angelina and who else it was going to be. So we were shell-shocked, which makes it even better.
Yep.
Poor Jon.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So to move on, we have number 16, a classic. Boston Rob deceives Lex to save Amber. So I know that there's going to be controversial opinions here. I know that there's a lot we could say, but Boston Rob makes a forward-thinking. I know it's so like some people might not even consider this a move. Like it was just like he said to him, "Keep Amber safe for me, and I'll have your back." That's such a like in New School Survivor. That's just such a simple thing to say, but for Lex to actually follow through and then for Rob to end up voting him out, I believe the next tribal council, just completely next level stuff. Very, very well ahead of his time. And because of this, Boston Rob ends up getting to the end with Amber. And you could also say because of this, Boston Rob ends up losing the game by 1 vote. But in theory, it still got him all the way from that point to the end of the game. And you can't I know it's old school Survivor, so it's different. You can't completely assume that somebody's going to be that bitter where they're going to try and convince people just to not vote for you at all. Like, I think Boston Rob kind of got a raw, not kind of, I think he did get a raw deal here with the bitter jury in All Stars, but I just think that this move was so ahead of its time. Something so simple, but worked completely perfectly for him.
Like he said, you take care of her, I'll take care of you. It's tough. This is like Spencer's move where it's so tough because obviously you could say this was not a great move because he ends up losing Lex and Kathy's vote because of this and loses the game. Sorry, he gets Kathy's vote, but he loses Lex's vote here, which costs him the win. On the other hand, like you said, Dylan, it gets him to the end because if Jerry stays at that vote and Amber goes home, Jerry, Lex, Kathy, and Cheyenne all go into the merge together against the 5 people from Shapira. And the problem is that Big Tom is a member of Shapira, but he and Lex, if you remember, played together in Africa. There was a chance Big Tom, if Jerry's there and Amber's gone, there's a chance Big Tom flips and Rob loses the number. So yes, it seems like this was like a simple move, like save my girlfriend and I'll take care of you. Seems like very simple, but Rob also probably was thinking I could lose a vote here in Big Tom. I have to make sure I have the numbers. So it was a good move to get him to the end, but the way he went about it lost him Lex's vote and the game.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a classic move and one that will be talked about forever and Boston Rob and Amber end up getting married. So, I mean, what a lot of things come out of it, but
he won in the
end. Anyway, number 15. Kellee saves Dean and blindsides Jack, Island of the Idols. You want to take this one, Ryan?
Yeah, no, this is an example of, again, like a Devin. Kellee I love when we see first-time players go all out and make huge moves. Again, I love the returning player season. We all love Winners at War. We all love Cambodia. But I like seeing new people play for the first time and seeing, what these newbies can bring to the table. Kellee senses here at the vote right before the merge. She realizes that Jack and Jamal are a strong force in the game. They have a lot of allies, and it's going to be tough to take them out post-merge. She also knows that she has an idol that is only good for that night, but she's not really in danger. And then she also knows Dean, who is her ally, is a target. So she says to herself, and it's actually funny because she realizes this mid-confessional and she goes, and you see her pause for about 10 seconds while she's kind of thinking about it in her head. She goes, what if I give the idol to Dean? He plays it on himself, negating all the votes against him. I will throw my vote on Dean, so it looks like I didn't make up this plan. And I'll get Dean and Nora to put a vote on Jack, so Jack can go home, and also so it doesn't bounce back on me. So it's a really intricate plan that would have worked if A, Nora didn't blab the plan right after they got back from Tribal, and B, you know, Kellee kind of made herself a big target here. But otherwise, it was a really intricate, great move.
Look, I think that there are a lot of flaws in this move, but I think that the details and the thought process behind this pretty much outweighs the flaws. Like, here's the problem with this move is, and again, this is a lot of hindsight stuff. Like, Kellee ends up getting blindsided with 2 idols in her pocket the next episode. But just, I think if there's not Nora and not somebody who's such a wild card big mouth in this game, I think this works perfectly. I think the fact that Kellee not only thought to use the idol to bring on Dean to make sure she didn't have any blood on her hands, that in theory is perfect. Now, the thing that could be debated with this move, and I think it was completely next level, but you know, at the time we didn't know that Nora was gonna blabber it right after Tribal, but like, just I don't know. It was honestly so next level, and I just think that her voting for Dean to make it seem like she didn't have any blood on her hands, that was next level stuff. So I do give her credit for that. And like we were talking about before, Kellee was so good at the beginning of the season. One thing that could be debated though, was it a little bit too much too early? That's what you see so much from some of these big threats. I think you could say it was, but had she used an idol when she got voted out, let's just say, then I think that she would have had a massive target on her back, but who knows what could have happened after that.
Yeah, again, like really quickly, like you said, hindsight's 2020. I mean, I think even Dean, after this vote, she thought, oh, it will, you know, give him a lot of loyalty to me. And Dean was kind of like, afterwards, I'll still vote her out. I don't care. So, I mean, it's tough. You can't play armchair quarterback and say, you know, hindsight bias. You have to just kind of go with what you know in the moment. But I do think this shows Kellee's strategic chops.
Yeah, and we were talking about this before also. I would love to see Kellee back. I know you would love to see Kellee back. Most people would love to see Kellee back, but unfortunately, because of what happened, who knows if she will ever be back. But if she does want another chance, I really do hope Survivor gives her another chance, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so I will talk about the next one, number 14. Chris Underwood puts himself into fire making. So an unpopular end to what I thought was an underrated season. We discussed this on Hot Takes last week. And Chris Underwood pretty much plays a completely perfect final episode. He gets back from he wins the battle back challenge. I believe he played an idol for Lauren, right, to gain her trust, and then ended up voting her out, right? Is that what happened?
He gets Lauren to play her idol on him.
Right. That's what it was. Okay, I'm mixing it up. But anyway, plays a perfect episode, perfect final episode, ends up getting the final 4, wins immunity, gives up immunity and gives the immunity necklace to Julie and says, I'm going to take on Rick Devens tonight in fire. Wins versus Rick Devens. Rick Devens easily was the biggest threat to win the game. Had Rick Devens walked into fire making and won, Rick Devens easily wins, but Chris beats him to cap off the perfect episode and ends up winning the game. I know this could be a little bit unpopular just because Chris Underwood is an unpopular winner because he did spend a lot of time on Edge of Extinction, but I think like you said when we were talking about before, this was one of the ballsiest moves in the history of Survivor, and I think you got to give credit where credit is due here. Yeah,
I mean, if this doesn't say the phrase "go big or go home," nothing else will, and I think a lot of people will say, you know, and this is kind of what Domenick's idea was when he was in this dilemma at Ghost Island. It's like, you know, I could do this. I could put myself into fire to take out the biggest threat. But if I lose, then I just took myself out of 4 and I can't win the game unless I'm there. So this is a really hard argument. I don't even know if I would have the confidence to do this at Final 4 because I want to make sure that I'm there to plead my case. But yeah, again, you have to give Chris Underwood a lot of credit for realizing in any scenario, if Rick Devens is there, Rick Devens wins. So I have to do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen. So I do give him a lot of credit for that. Despite how controversial the whole season was, you have to give Chris credit for going all out when he had his second chance at the game.
Look, yeah, and I do want to give our guy Dom some credit here, because if he does not throw out that idea at the end of season 36, Ghost Island, he doesn't end up doing it to make fire against Wendell. But if just him throwing out that idea and getting at that confessional, these Edge of Extinction contestants, they just had seen that season before they went out to play. So I'm sure that played a major role in Chris's thought process. So I want to give Dom some credit there for thinking of that idea. And then Chris actually putting it into play, just really, really ballsy, risky move that ends up winning him the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So the next one, number 13, Aubry gets tied to flip on Scot and Jason, Kaoh Rong. I'll take this one. Yeah. So you have Aubry, so Ty is in a tight, what is thought to be a tight 3 with Scot and Jason. They have between the 3 of them, they had 2 idols. I know Ty had one, and then I believe Jason had the other, right?
Yeah, they were sharing.
Right. So they but they were kind of sharing it between the 3 of them. And the way it worked is that they needed 2 idols in order to form a super idol that could be played with after the vote. So what happens is Aubry's alliance decides that they're going to vote for Scot that night. And what happens is Aubry convinces Ty to go with them. Ty ends up voting Scot. The votes are read for Scot. Scot gets voted out. And then Scot famously turns to Ty and is like, well, let's go. Let's play the super idol. And Ty was just like, no, I'm not going to do it. And that was the blindside that ends Scott's time here on Survivor. It's Kaoh Rong. Pretty villainous move from Ty, who looks to be so not villainous. Like, this is, but really, really great move by him.
God, the pro athletes just can't catch a break in Survivor, huh?
Yeah.
Can't catch a break. No, again, this is a great move by Aubry. I know Ty is the one who doesn't do it, but I think Aubry is, so instrumental in making Ty flip here. It's kind of like how Coach is instrumental in making Cochran flip in South Pacific. Basically, Aubry picks up on the fact that Ty is aligned with Scot and Jason, but his morals and his character don't really align with them. And she kind of wants to talk to him about that and pick up on those nodes and try to say, hey, you know what? You can come play the game with us and we'll play the game differently. And I give her a lot of credit for picking up on those facts. And, basically not only does she get Ty on her side as a number, she basically ensures that, hey, if this is the final 2 for some reason, I know it's a final 3, but if it's me and Ty in the end, he just screwed over Scot and Jason. He won't get their votes, and he won't get Nick's vote. And Julia is their friend. He won't get Julia's vote. So Aubry's not only getting the number, she's kind of isolating some of Ty's jury votes as well. So I feel like Aubry is a great social and strategic player. Obviously, in my mind, one of the, if not the best player in Survivor, Kaoh Rong. So I give Aubry a lot of credit here for this move.
Yeah. And look, I know that it's very popular opinion that Aubry should have won this season. If she were to win, this definitely would have been her signature move.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
All right. So number 12, the 3 Amigos double idol play to take out Phillip, Caramoan. You want to go with this one?
Yeah, so this was one where, again, I think this is controversial. I feel like we have a lot of great, moves here, and then some that you could argue, maybe should have or shouldn't have made the list. I think this one, when we talk about, moves that are flashy or moves that we remember or big moves in Survivor history, this is a big move. Obviously, the biggest caveat against this move is that it doesn't really work out in the long run because Malcolm will go out right after this Phillip blindside, and Reynolds will go out after him. So the 3 Amigos could have maybe leveraged their spot in the game. But when we talk about big moves, Dylan, and we hear the 3 Amigos say, look, Reynolds has immunity. I have an idol. And this is Malcolm. I have an idol. I'm going to give Eddie my other idol. The 3 of us are safe. I think their mistake here was they said, and we're all going to vote Phillip. I think actually, and this is funny, I think to Tanner's point, to bring Tanner's point up about Mike, where Mike kind of did Russian roulette, like one of you guys is going to get a vote. I think that's actually what the 3 Amigos should have done. I think the 3 Amigos should have said, look, we're going to put 3 votes on somebody. Andrea thinks it's her, but we're going to put our 3 votes on someone. Cochran, Cirie, Dawn. So you guys, you know what? Figure it out amongst yourselves. And maybe in that moment they realize, because I think Cochran's smart, and Cochran probably says, yeah, Phillip is the figurehead, but he's not really running a lot of stuff. Maybe Cochran says, oh, I'll make a big move and I'll take out Brenda or Andrea here. So I guess, again, to Tanner's point where Mike plays Russian roulette, I think the three amigos should have played Russian roulette here to see, you know, who the alliance was going to flip on. But again, it was a big move. It was super memorable, and Phillip goes out in a grand fashion.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I know that people like to joke around about Phillip, and you say he might have been the figurehead, but he was doing a pretty good job of keeping the favorites together, the ones who were in his Stealth R Us alliance, and that alliance was, you know, pretty much running the game, at least from what the edit told us. So I think it was, you know, a pretty good move and definitely a flashy one as well.
Yeah. Quick question in the comments from Adam. This is actually a good point. He asks, I don't know if you could bring it up. Oh, there you go. He mentions that, you know, if Chris gives up immunity to Julie, since we just talked about this, would she then not be the one to pick who goes to fire since she holds the necklace? This was actually debated a lot after the season. I know Rob and Steven covered this. I think everybody and Jeff just assumed that if Julie has the necklace, she'll take her ally Gavin with her and she'll put the two biggest threats, the guys, into fire. But yeah, Adam's right. I think technically, as per the rules, if Julie has the necklace, then she says, I'm going to bring who I want. But I think it was kind of like a formality.
That's actually, I actually never thought about that. But what you would think that she would have sent them both to fire anyway.
Yeah, I think everybody just assumed like, okay, like she's going to take Gavin and the big threats are going to go to fire. But technically, as per the rules, Julie should be the one to say, I'm taking Gavin.
Yeah, maybe that was the case and they just didn't show it. But like, I don't know. I feel like they would have showed that. But maybe also I guess the only reason she would not have taken Chris, the only reason she would have taken Chris and put Gavin there would have been to not bolster Chris's resume. But then you also have to think that Rick Devens probably beats Gavin anyway. So I don't know. But that's actually a really interesting question by Adam there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So the next one, number 11. So this is one of the all-time hilarious moves in my opinion, but also a very good one. So we put it on here up high. Boston Rob blindsides Matt for a second time, Redemption Island. I believe the quote was, send his ass right back to redemption. That was the line from Rob to Grant as soon as Matt won his way back in at the merge. And, you know, here's why this move is so smart, because Rob basically realized that he's playing with a bunch of newbies and, you know, happened to be playing with a lot of people who are really young also. Maybe we're trying to get their footing in the game. And he said, we have to stay strong. And he basically brainwashed them to think anybody who is not with us is against us. Anybody who even talks to anybody else is against us. And clearly Matt was a big threat originally, which is why he gets voted out. Now Matt comes back. I forgot what it, Ometepe, right? That was their tribe name, right? So Ometepe has a 7-5 advantage going into the merge if you do count Matt. So they didn't need Matt to pull this move off. They had the strong 6, which was Phillip, Grant, Rob, Ashley, Andrea, and Natalie. And what they do is they all vote Matt because they think that, because Rob thinks that Matt is the one that could potentially plant seeds and end up breaking up this group. Matt and Andrea were extremely close, and he knew that Andrea was a great player and did not want to let Matt get into Andrea's head enough to the point where they could eventually flip and he could lose those numbers and have his game in jeopardy. So this was really a huge merge vote. And a lot of people say that the merge vote is, you know, definitely one of the most important votes in Survivor in terms of the whole game, because it pretty much sets the tone for the rest of the game. And that's exactly what this did here. Rob got rid of a potential threat to his alliance of 6. And then from there, they pretty much just picked one by one off, and Rob ends up winning the game. So this is, again, a smaller type move that was hilarious because, and, you know, I'm sure people felt bad for Matt, but it was really funny that he got sent right back to redemption. But yeah, Boston Rob pretty much perfected this one.
It's so brutal. And you're right. It did set the tone. And this is what David Murphy mentions when he gets up there in front of the jury and says to them, like, look, you got to give it to Rob. He basically put fear into his alliance, said it's us versus them. And if you show any sign of disloyalty, one by one, you'll go home. So Rob basically dictated the game from this point on, even if he wasn't already. And I just think that this basically, this just shows after 4 times, Rob understands the game and understands that any little seed of doubt can grow. The minute Matt comes to him and says, hey, you know, I was thinking of flipping, or I was approached to flip. I thought about it, but I said no. He realizes, oh, I'm not leaving this loose end in the game. It's got to go. So this is just great puppet master stuff by Rob.
Yeah, for sure. All right, number 10. We're in the top 10 now. We're at halftime, so we got 10 more left. And I'm curious to see what you guys think of our first 10 and what you guys think of the 10 we have coming up. So number 10, very fresh in our minds.
Speaking of brutal.
Denise slays the queen, winners at war. Ryan, want to take this one?
Oh, the Queen Slayer, Denise, first of her name. Basically, this is the modern day Parvati double idol play that you may or may not see later. But basically, this is amazing by Denise. And it was so great to see Denise in confessionals here and to hear her say, look, as a player and as a former winner, I'm known for surviving every tribal council. I have a great social game, but I don't have a lot of flashy moves on my overall survivor resume. And when Sandra approaches her and says, look, you give me your 2 fire tokens and I'll give you an idol, Denise realizes, Sandra's acting kind of confident here. And she basically wants to take credit for this move with no blood on her hands. And I'm like looking like the bad guy to take out either Jeremy or Tony. And I don't want to do that. And she realizes I have an idol already. I can make a big move here. And yeah, she's telling me they're all going to vote for me. But what if she's lying to my face? I give up my tokens to her and Jeremy goes home. She basically in one fell swoop, and this is why this is great because Denise manages to then go back under the radar. In one tribal, she manages to save herself and Jeremy, only give up 1 fire token and keeps 1 fire token for herself and blindsides the queen. So I think this is, again, in recent memory, one of the biggest moves we've seen on TV that left everybody completely shell-shocked to see Denise do that to Sandra.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a few reasons why this move was so shocking. So, first of all, Denise is not the type that you would expect to make this move. Like, she hadn't made a flashy move like that before, and I think that's why it really ends up working so well. Then, I remember us being on the podcast after and talking about this, but the editing was so perfect because you thought Tony was going home. The camera kept panning Tony, 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 and we're all of us Tony fans over here like, no, no, no. And then, boom, Sandra just shocked when her name ends up coming up. Audible yells from my family when I was watching. Like, I'm sure a lot of people at home also. Just completely amazing tribal council and really, really smart by Denise to say that she's going to pay Sandra 1 token after, so that she doesn't actually have to give it to her. She can keep 1 for herself. Just really, really next level. A lot of people say she wastes an idol by playing it on Jeremy, but I 100% think that it was the right move because I know you could say it in hindsight, you could say the idol was wasted, but I think if you're going to make a big move like that, you have to make sure it works. Like, you have to ensure that it's going to work. So she makes sure she's safe. She makes sure Jeremy's safe, and she ends up voting out the queen. Now, a lot of people could also criticize this move in hindsight because Tony ends up winning the game. That's to me, you can't really say that. I mean, you could say it in hindsight, but like in the moment, the right move was to get rid of Sandra here, and I truly believe that.
Adam mentions in the comments this would have been a great move for Sandra if she would have known Denise was gunning for her before the game started. Yeah, we've actually referenced this a couple of times in some of our other podcasts where one of the reporting sites or one of the news sites, I think it was Dalton Ross, somebody asked the players before the game, who would you vote out? And Denise wrote down Sandra's name. So if she only knew this was coming.
Yeah, I mean, look, just a move that left everybody shocked, and I will give everybody a hint and say this will not be the last time we see winners at war on this list. So I know you want to
be ready.
I know you want to talk about the next one, Ryan. So
yeah.
I'm going to go to that right now. Number 9, Natalie saves Jacalyn and blindsides Baylor.
Jacalyn, did you vote for who I told you to vote for? This is such a boss move. Again, and to reference your earlier point when you mentioned theatrics and you mentioned, making a show to the jury, this is what you do. Basically, you say to the jury, like, I'm controlling this game. This is my move that I'm making, and I'm kind of dictating how the end game will go. And that's what Natalie did. Basically, from the moment Jeremy gets voted out, as Jeremy says in his jury speech, Natalie balls out. She essentially gets Jon to trust her because Jon plays his idol to save himself. Then she mistakenly, quote unquote, votes the wrong way and Alec goes home. Then she blindsides Jon, and then she takes out Baylor here. Natalie plays such a great game. And I think this is her best move of the season because Natalie realizes heading into the final 5, Missy and Baylor are mother-daughter. This isn't like Cirie or Laura. Baylor is not voting out Missy here whatsoever. And she's like, okay, if I get to final 4 and it's me, Missy, Baylor, and Keith, they could turn on me if Keith wins immunity and I'm going to go home, because Keith was the challenge threat up until that point. So if Keith wins again, I'm screwed. So she realizes I'm going to take out an unbreakable bond, and I'm going to basically save Jacalyn here, who's a big threat, who's also an immunity threat that could beat Keith, which she ends up beating Keith. And I'm going to basically secure myself at the end game here. And like I said, she asked Jacalyn, did you vote for who I told you to vote for? Saves Jacalyn and presents her masterful game. I think this is a really underrated, great end game move.
Yeah, and I think that, Natalie is definitely a better winner than a lot of people may give her credit for. She pretty much had complete control of the game from the merge on. And she made big moves like this. And I have to say, it was a little bit disappointing to watch her get screwed in the Winners at War tribe draw, I should say, where she gets put with Jeremy and is just basically the easy first vote, I should say. But look, complete challenge beast, ends up winning her way back and ends up the runner-up of the season, whether it's controversial or not. So Natalie, truly one of the great Survivor players that we've ever seen. And this move to save Jacalyn here was definitely a great one. So cracks our top 10 and makes number 9.
Yeah. Let's go.
All right. So number 8, one of my personal favorites, Tony bluffs about the super idol, Cagayan. So this was a truly masterful move. And I want to point out that I believe that Tony has never successfully played an idol to save votes from himself. And that's bizarre, but I believe that is what's the case is, because he uses idols in a different way. He uses it kind of as leverage, and here he gets a super idol that can be played after the votes are played. But he says, well, I can advance myself if I'm not going to be winning immunities, I can advance myself further in the game by basically using this as leverage and telling people that this could be played at Final Four, and that's its power. So the super idol was completely powerless at the Final Four, but Tony tells Cass, Spencer, and Wu that the super idol's power is that it can be played at 4, not 5. So he survives an extra tribal council and gets to Final 3 because he bluffs his way by the super idol and everybody believes him, and then doesn't win immunity at Final 3, but convinces Wu to take him to the Final 2, locking up the win for Tony and Cagayan. Truly masterful gameplay, and why one of the beginning of the greatest player of all time right here.
Yeah, I agree. Calling out John Rocker there. Oh god, I love San Juan del Sur. Quick side note: I know it's an underrated season, but I love San Juan del Sur a lot. Yeah, no, this move by Tony again goes to that one step above where you're just. And actually, Dylan texted me this back when Tony did his deep dive with Rob. Like, Tony just thinks on a level that's not where anyone else. Like, Tony thinks miles above where anyone else is thinking of. His mind just goes a million miles an hour. And I can't even imagine another player that can conceptualize what Tony can conceptualize. But this is really interesting where he's kind of bluffing about the rules of the idol. And I think more people should do this. Again, it has to be within the rules, Dylan, because sometimes CBS is very strict on like what you can and can't lie about. Like back when I used to watch Big Brother, the show was very strict on like, if you have an advantage in Big Brother, you cannot lie about the rules of the event. Like they will tell you cannot lie about what it can do. But in Survivor, we see a lot. You can kind of bluff and say, oh, it could be used until 5. It could be used until 4. Oh, this has matured into a real idol. This has not matured. Like, I think as long as you can bluff and you ask producers, can I lie about this? You should do it, because then that means you're kind of getting people to your way of thinking and they kind of have to go along with the game that you're putting on the game board. So I think that if Tony was allowed to do this, he really masterfully carved his path to ensure his end game.
Absolutely insane. And I know that and I agree that more people should definitely do that within the rules with the, any advantage. They should, stretch the rules a little bit to play it up a little bit more. But we're just like, this is truly next level. And I remember you mentioned the Rob Cesternino deep dive with Tony and how he's just thinking on a next level. For anybody that did not watch that, I know it's 3 hours, so you may not have watched it all. I watched it on a span of a few nights because it's so long. But yeah, literally, we did not see so much in the edited Winners of War I hope that if we don't have a season in the fall, just show us unseen footage of Tony just running around the jungle at night, honestly. But apparently, if you don't know this already, he used to just make fires at night in the jungle every single night. He barely slept. But what did he do out there? Not only was he searching for idols, he was creating fake idols. One of the reasons why Nick trusted him so much that wasn't shown on TV is because Tony created a fake idol and showed it to Nick, so that Nick would trust him more. Also, Tony would just do crazy things to lower his threat level that you would not even think of, such as standing on lower ground when he's talking to somebody else, purposely losing games around camp, like wearing the buff in a not threatening way, like just crazy stuff that nobody except for Tony would ever think of this stuff. So guys just insanely good. And this move with the super idol and in Cagayan is truly one of the best we've ever seen.
The greatest of all time. Love to see it.
All right. So the next, this is one of my favorites also. I could take this one, number 7, and then you'll take number 6, but
yeah, go for it.
Number 7 right here. Sarah votes out Cirie to obtain the legacy advantage in Game Changers. I know that Game Changers is a controversial season. Many people don't love the cast. People complain about the order of the votes, but Sarah truly played a great game in Game Changers, and this was her best move, an absolutely unbelievable move. But the legacy advantage, for those who don't remember, it's that where it could be played at 13 or 6, I believe. And if you played at those, you have immunity. And so that was obviously going around in Game Changers, and Sarah knew, because she had gained trust with Cirie, that Cirie had the legacy advantage and that she could gift it to somebody after she would get voted out. So she built that set. Now we talk about Sarah's social game and how it's one of the best of all time. Here, she got so close with Cirie that Cirie basically never saw Sarah blindsiding her on, like, even through when it actually happens. Like, and we talk about theatrics. Sarah, as all this was happening, pretended to be shocked, and Cirie completely bought it and ends up giving her the legacy advantage. She uses it in the episode where Cirie unfortunately gets voted out because she's the only one with no safety, no immunity. But this was truly next level from Sarah.
God, anytime I hear advantage get, and I cringe on the inside. And it's also, this is so crazy to see on a rewatch if you ever rewatch this episode, because I think in the first few minutes we see Cirie tell Sarah this, and you realize, oh, this is when her fate was sealed. Because right after Cirie tells her, Sarah goes, oh, she's trusting me with this information. I might want to keep her in the game. I might want to, work with Cirie moving forward because she trusts me. But then when she realizes, oh, the votes are kind of going to go Ciara's way, but maybe they won't, Sarah goes, you know what? I need that advantage. I want that. And she, like you said, theatrics plays it up so perfectly. She does lose Ciara's jury vote, but I think Cirie was going to vote for her number 1 ally, Brad, no matter what. So it's not too much of a loss, honestly. And Sarah this paves her way to do a great job in the end game. And it was never shown in Advantage Get, and it was never shown who the 6 votes were for. All we know is that Cirie never got a single vote. According to 1 or 2 sources, Dylan, it looks like Sarah actually got like 1, 2, or 3 votes. Sarah actually had votes coming her way. So this possibly could have saved her in that tribal. So I think this was an amazing move by Sarah, and proves to some people's discredit why Sarah is such a great player.
Yeah, and last week I called her top 5 all time, and this is one of the reasons why. She's just so great socially and strategically. But speaking of Cirie and her no vote advantage get in tribal council, one of your favorite moves of all time, number 6. Cirie's 3-2-1 plan in Panama.
Oh, the 3-2-1. Cirie Fields, I will always say the best to never win. She may have another move on this list as well at some point. So again, like I mentioned when I first talked about Devin Pinto, when you see a first-time player, think a few steps ahead and say, what's going to happen and how can I prevent that from happening? This is what Cirie does here, and we've seen Cirie do nothing but amazing moves throughout all her time in Survivor. Cirie basically at the final 6 in Panama, and this is also going back to minority vote splits, if you can pull off a plurality vote, basically where you can pull off a vote out where you have half or less than half of the votes and you don't have a majority, that speaks to how great you are at working through the social matrix. Cirie realizes at the final 6 of Panama that, listen, Terry wants to take Courtney to the end. Shane wants Courtney in the end. Obviously, Courtney wants Courtney in the end. So at this point, when there's only a final 2 in Survivor, that takes away a guaranteed spot for Cirie. She has a less chance of getting there, and she wants to make that happen. Forgetting of how big of a challenge threat Terry is, forgetting about Aris being a likable guy. If Courtney's there, even if she can't win, she's taking a spot away from Cirie. So Cirie goes, how do I vote out Courtney without pissing off Shane and Terry, but also making sure that I can get there? So she basically goes to Shane and says, look, who do you want out? And Shane says, I want Danielle gone yesterday. So she goes, fine, we can vote out Shane. We'll rope in Courtney and Aris. We're going to vote out Danielle. She won't see it coming. Then she goes to Courtney and makes a final 4 with Courtney, Danielle, and Terry, and says, we're going to vote out Aris here because Terry wants Aris gone because they're rivals, and Courtney thinks Aris will win. So she says, Shane's voting for Danielle. He'll be left on his own, and we are going to vote for Aris. She then says to herself, okay, now Shane is the one person voting for Danielle, and Terry and Courtney are the 2 voting for Aris. So there's 3 left. Me, Aris, and Danielle. If we vote for Courtney, Courtney goes home in a 3-2-1 that they won't see coming. And again, this just proves how great she was at understanding the social matrix in the game and maneuvering through it. Cirie Fields just masterminded the final 6.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about, on this list, we talk about stuff that has never been done before. And at that point in Survivor, that's just such a unheard of type thing. And, now it's paved the way to players to have 4-3-2s and other, votes like that. So when we see, the first of a move is always more impressive. So, really, well, we may have a 4-3-2 coming up, but there's more to that. So all credit to Cirie. I completely agree that she's one of, if not the best to ever win. All right. Number 5, Kellee Wentworth's idol play, the Savage Blindside in Cambodia. So this is obviously, almost all Survivor fans, one of their favorite moves, one of the best tribal councils of the new school era. You have Witches Coven 3 versus 9 at the Cass had gotten voted out, so it was 3 versus 9. You have Cirie, Abby, and Wentworth on the bottom, and then you have the 9 in the majority. And Kellee has the idol that she had found in the challenge in the very first episode, and she basically says, you know what, I'm going to play it. And it turned out that the 9 did not split votes. All the votes went on Kellee Wentworth. It is the most votes ever voided by a person who played an idol. So she nulls all their votes, and them 3 end up voting Savage, who goes out in an absolutely brutal way on his second chance. And it was arguably the best idol play that we've ever seen. So Kellee Wentworth, and I was reading on Reddit the other day, and somebody made a meme about it or whatever, and people were like, "That's the moment she became like a legend." Like it was that good of a move. Like it truly was, and obviously it helps that she played such a good game the rest of the way as well.
It does not. Wentworth does not count. Oh my god, I love hearing that moment. But like Tony once said, we are now in the top 5, baby. Any of these moves you can consider to be your favorite move of all time or your best move of all time or whatever criteria you want to use. But yeah, anytime that you become the player to negate the most votes against you, you definitely put your mark in the history books here. It's always debated why, the majority alliance didn't split the votes between the minority, but in the end, this was a great play here. And imagine if the Witches Coven says we take out Jeremy here. I don't think they were going to do that because I think Kellee and Jeremy were still kind of close from San Juan del Sur. But, Savage goes out in a big way here. Imagine if like a Spencer goes out or a Jeremy goes out. This is just crazy to see on a rewatch. And even though Savage goes home, this is also a Savage blindside.
Yeah, something I had never really thought of about this. Like, if you're talking about Jeremy and his meat shield strategy, like Savage is almost the perfect person to align with as a meat shield because he's just such an outspoken leader that that he's always going to probably get votes before you. So just another layer of Jeremy's game, I should say. Not that he had that much control of that at all, but I think that's interesting a little bit. All right, number 4. Russell gets Tyson to flip his vote. Heroes versus villains. A classic move that was being debated on our Twitter replies today. Go for it, Ryan.
Oh man, this is one of the greatest moves of all time. And what happened in our Twitter replies was that some people were linking to a Reddit page where, if you should check it out if you haven't seen it yet, where it kind of goes over a secret scene between Parvati and Tyson, where even though I think Russell should get credit for this move, it's a masterful play. I think Parvati had a bit more going on behind the scenes as well, where it kind of explains why Tyson really does throw his vote at Parvati. But yes, no, this is a really crazy move where it's the villains tribe and it's the outsiders of Russell, Danielle, and Parvati versus Boston Rob as majority. And Russell realizes, look, it's going to be 3 votes on me, 3 votes on Parv. I have the idol. If I save myself, she's going home on a revote, and there's nothing I can do about it. But you know what? Maybe I can do something about it. And I think what you will see, Dylan, in this top 5 and with a lot of these plans is trying to make the impossible possible, trying to get yourself out of a really tough situation, because that's the mark of a great player, where you see the pieces laid out in front of you and you go, well, I don't like how this looks. I'm going to do something to change it, no matter how hard it might be. Because if everyone just stays loyal, like Rob says, if you just stay to the plan, or as Keith Nail says, stick to the plan, then it can't fail. But Russell pulls aside Tyson and goes, look, I love her. She's in my alliance, but I can't really help her. I think I'm going to throw my vote at her. And Tyson goes, oh, well, I'm voting for Russell, but if Parvati's going to go home anyway, I might as well vote for Parvati. And as we see in a secret scene, I think Tyson picks up on the fact that if Parvati doesn't go home, he might go home. So he tries to ensure his safety, which explains it a bit more, even though it was still a bad move. And he says, look, Russell's telling me that Parv will get the votes. I'm going to vote for Parv. And then Russell says, okay, well, I'm going to play my idol on Parvati. She's safe. And all the votes on her are negated. I'll get 2 votes, but then the 3 votes will carry the day and Tyson will go home. It's such a masterful play at like the final 16 in this game. To see a great play that early is crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, again, such next level thinking. I feel like I've said next level a million times. That's truly what it is when we're talking about these moves. And, look, it was kind of a panic move by Tyson, and there's such a fine line between worst moves and best moves. Like, the best move for somebody else could be the worst move in the history for somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what it is here. You could say that Tyson makes one of the worst moves in Survivor history, but at the same time, what made it happen? The best move, one of the best moves in Survivor history from Russell here. So I think, and I think that, and a season 27 or beyond, Tyson doesn't make this mistake where he's as experienced to know not to panic. And that's something he did here, where even if it's a 3-3 vote or 3-3-3, because he didn't know about the idol, but if it's a 3-3-3 vote, then, and let's just say, even if the idol is played, so it's a 3-3 and your name's on the block, you still are in the majority. So on the revote, Russell will be the one to go home. So I think that, he did kind of panic a little bit, but in a game of Survivor where you have little food in your system, you have so many things going on, all it might take is a few C's just to get somebody going a little bit crazy. And that's exactly what Russell perfected. So if you can control the way they feel, you can control the way they think. So
as he once famously said, I was going to throw in there, he says it's called a Russell seed, and when it takes root, it just grows. So Russell's great at playing on the paranoia, putting on the fear, and doing a great job here. And
if Tyson votes correctly here, who knows? We could have seen a Boston Rob win in Heroes versus Villains. Like, you never know what you could have seen, because Boston Rob was pretty much running this game early. So I think it is interesting. You could have seen a variety of different outcomes if Russell ends up going home.
Yeah, and again, really quickly also to go back onto the go big or go home factor of Chris Underwood. I mean, when you're basically up against the wall, like Russell could have easily gone here if somebody else voted one extra way. He basically gives up his idol to Parvati, putting himself in the crosshair. So anytime you make a ballsy move like that gets a lot of credit.
Yeah, for sure. It is definitely one of the best moves that we have ever seen. Mm-hmm. And, we have more from Heroes Villains coming up, and that is why it's such a great season. Anytime you can get 2 top 4 moves in a single season, it is the best of all time. Mm-hmm. Okay, the next move, another one that is very, very recent in our memories. Tony beats Extortion and blindside Sophie in Winners at War in what could have been the best single performance in a single episode, maybe minus Chris Underwood or maybe over Chris Underwood. Tony ends up winning the game as well. But what an episode this was for Tony. Not only does he win immunity, does he get the most confessionals ever, he gets extorted and he somehow figures out a way to get all the tokens that he could still participate in the immunity challenge, which he wins. And then at the last second, he knows that there's a split vote coming, or a supposed split vote coming between Jeremy and Michelle. And he says, well, if I could get 4 together, it would be a 4-3-2 and we could pull this off. And and what's so perfect about this is he waits until the very last minute to where people can't scramble anymore, really. And he goes, you have to trust me. We have to vote Sophie. We have to vote Sophie. They're voting for you. Goes up to Jeremy and says it because that Jeremy was supposed to go home here. Jeremy and Michelle were together, so she ends up coming with. And then Nick was also very close with Tony and says, yeah, let's make a big move. And this is just perfected so perfectly. And this is the move that I think ultimately puts Tony in position to win Winners at War, because had Sophie stayed in the game, I'm not sure that Sophie would have stood for Tony pretty much running things. And Sophie was playing a top 3 game in Winners at War, so I have to give her credit. And, the fact that they did this so perfectly, where she didn't even see it coming, to the point where she goes home with an idol in her pocket as well. It's so perfect. So perfect. An amazing episode. Beating Extortion, putting it all like together is just amazing.
No, I do agree with everything you said. I honestly think if we're talking about best in show or who's had, an episode where it's considered one of the best singular episode performances, Tony has to take that crown here. And I do think if he doesn't make this move, Sophie's in a great spot to maybe win this game. And Sarah also was set up very well here. I think this was where Sarah kind of lost some footing in the game a bit with her number 1 ally. Again, even with going back to the Extortion, he had such a hard task where he had to get 3 extra tokens because he only had 3 himself. And he manages to go to 2 different sides of the alliance in the game and says, hey, I need a token, gets one from Ben, gets one from Nick, Jeremy. He gets these tokens from 2 different sides of people in the game, 2 different alliances, which is insane. Beats Extortion, gets the immunity, then basically says, look, I know Jeremy and Michelle are going to be the split vote here, but I need Jeremy in this game. So why don't I pull in Nick and I'll have Jeremy and Michelle and we vote out Sophie. It's just so masterful here. Honestly, Tony, I know we love the craziness of Cagayan Tony, but Winners at War Tony plays so high level, so flawlessly. It's amazing to see.
Yeah, and I could even make an argument that this deserves to be higher. Like, I think it's that good. It was so perfect when you couple everything together. And I mean, we talk about the reason why the 2 that we're going to talk about ahead of this are ahead is because I think that it's more of quote unquote pulling off the impossible. And that's something we talk about with big moves. I wouldn't exactly now this definitely the odds were against him. I'm not, yeah, he pulled off the impossible, but was it to the extent of the 2 ahead? That's something for everyone to debate. But like you said, any of these top moves could be number 1. Like, they're all so good.
Yeah. Again, that's what I mentioned when we got to the top 5, baby. I said you could rank these in any order you really want.
Right. And we have number 2 here. Parvati's double idol play / Russell plays up the Women's Alliance in Heroes vs. Villains. A classic move.
I will agree, Tanner. I will do the happy dance, and I'll watch some Mike Holloway later tonight.
Wait, but before we go on here,
yeah.
If you watched our podcast last week, I am a huge Mike Holloway fan. That was one of my hot takes. I said he should have been on Winners at War. I said Worlds Apart is an underrated season. I'm a big Mike Holloway fan. I think he played a pretty fantastic game in Worlds Apart, and I would have loved to see him on Winners at War. So, and I mean, we will be watching. Sure, I'll watch Mike Holloway videos anytime.
So with Parvati's double idol play / Russell plays up the Women's Alliance, because they kind of go hand in hand here. If you look at any list, I know our list you could either agree with or disagree with, but if you look at the 10 best idol plays, the top 5 power plays of all time, best strategic moves, everybody has this move in their top 5 no matter what. It's the most, well, also with our number 1 as well. It's the most consistent placement overall. This move by Well, let's start with Russell, because Russell kind of like sets the seeds up for this move to happen, and then Parvati kind of like puts the finishing blow on it. Basically, after Rob goes home, well, I mean, technically Randy goes home first and then Tyson, but Russell plays up this whole act where after the guys on the villains go home one by one, he gets to the challenges. He's like pleading to the heroes. He's like playing up the fact that there's an all women's alliance, and the heroes buy it hook, line, and sinker. JT, in one of the worst moves ever, writes Russell a note saying, "This is not a joke. I wouldn't waste your time or mine." I probably could recite half the note, actually. But he says, "I will give you the idol if you vote with us at the merge and you take out Parvati," which obviously Russell will not do. And when they get to the merge, Russell plays up the fact that, oh, Parvati's still here because she pulled out an idol and Courtney went home, but I'm with you guys. And this basically sets up the stage for Parvati's double idol play, where Danielle wins immunity, and now Parvati has an idol, and Russell's going to give her an idol because she's kind of in the hot seat. Amanda goes to Parvati and says, "You better play that thing because we're voting for you." And Parvati is so well in tune with the social game and the strategic game. She knows from playing with Amanda before, Amanda's lying to her face, and they're not voting for Parvati. They're going to flush out the idol and vote for either Sandra or Jerry. And they're not going to vote for Russell because they think Russell's with them. So Parvati susses out, if I have two idols, because this is a critical vote, this is a 5-5 vote. Whoever survives this vote will carry the day in this game, and the villains end up running the table in the end of the season. They can't vote for Danielle. They're lying to me about voting for me. They think Russell's with them, so they're going to pick either Jerry or Sandra. So to guarantee that one of them's safe, I'll play my idol on both of them and ensure their loyalty to me. And she ends up taking out JT here. This is just so well done on all aspects of the game. And like you said, it's making a very hard task made possible.
Yeah, I'll play this one for Sandra, and then Jeff, I'll play, and I like to increase our odds. So just incredible move by Parvati and Russell. I think again, this just is another move that just had so many different moving parts. First of all, it's extremely important because it's 5-5 at this point, and you need the numbers. So Russell playing up the women's alliance by just being like, yeah, they're all against me, and like making faces and like facial expressions to the other tribe. Like, and I just remember like the heroes are all like, oh, we're come to help you, Russell. Like it was just, they didn't know who Russell Hantz was. They didn't know that they were dealing with the biggest villain in Survivor history. And I think that he pretty much perfects that to the point where not only do they want him on his side, they want him on. They want to save him enough that that JT gifts him the idol, and then that idol is used to make the move to get JT out. So it is truly amazing, and the fact that that one of the idols were played for the right person, that JT does get out at a 5-5, and it gives him complete control of the rest of the game. So really a amazing move.
Yeah, I mean this is why we mentioned when we talked about Denise slaying the queen. A double idol play is seen so rarely. So when you see it pulled off well and perfectly, it makes for great TV, makes for great conversations, great strategic play. So we'd love to see it.
All right. Our number one move. I think a lot of people know what is coming. The Black Widow Brigade convinces Eric to give up immunity. And again, we talk about making the impossible possible. And for an alliance of 4, Parvati, Amanda, Cirie, and Natalie versus Eric, who had immunity. Well, how do these 4 advance in the game if Eric has immunity? Well, wait, would he give up his immunity? And the fact that, I don't know if anyone watched I'm sure a lot of people did, but the documentary, the 1-hour documentary they did right before Winners at War, they had interviews with Parvati, and she was basically saying this move needed to be played. Every single person needed to perfect their role in order for this to get to, completely work. And it did. Natalie plays Eric perfectly. Eric gives up his immunity and gets voted out in what is both the dumbest move and best move in Survivor history.
Yeah, like you said, making the impossible possible. Like out of every move on this list, like this move should not have worked. Eric is guaranteed safety to the final 4. He has seen these women all take out the men by blindsiding Ozzy and Jason. he knows that and basically when you see a precedent that has been set before you, you kind of pick up on the pattern. Eric doesn't pick up on the pattern, and this should not have worked, and it did. And the minute Cirie says on the beach, I wonder if he would give up his necklace to you, Nat. The plan is set in motion, like you mentioned, Dylan. They all have a role to play. Amanda and Parvati have to get mad at Eric at Tribal Council to make sure he feels guilted into making this move, and Natalie and Cirie will stay quiet so he feels like they're voting with me. Natalie has to go to him and say, look, give me the necklace, and we'll vote for Amanda. And he says, kind of smartly, well, why can't we just vote for Amanda and I don't give you the necklace? And she's like, because you have been wishy-washy all game. You're not trustworthy. I've heard you talk to Amanda, then lie about Amanda. You've lied about me. I can't trust you'll actually vote Amanda's name down. So you know what? I'm not going to make this move with you if you're not willing to give a little. And then he goes to Cirie and he says, like, Cirie, why can't I just keep my necklace? And she's like, and this is why, again, Cirie Fields is amazing because she plays it so perfectly and she knows exactly what to say, where she says, you know what? Like, actions speak louder than words. If your credibility is shot, then your words mean nothing. It's your actions that will carry the day. And if you give up your necklace, that would cue me to vote for Amanda. And he does it. The Black Widow Brigade basically makes a task where no one should ever give up, no matter what, you should never give up your immunity at Final Five, ever. And they basically get Eric to give up his safety, thinking, oh, I'll vote out Amanda here because I can't win in the end. I need a game-winning move. Maybe this is my move. And like Cirie says, the minute he lets go of that necklace, his torch will be snuffed so fast. And it happens. I think this is the best move in history because not only was it impossible, but it took multiple people playing at peak level to pull it off. I just think this is the height of Survivor gameplay.
Yeah, it really is incredible. And then you have James laughing on the jury as he's relieved of his worst move ever.
I've lost my brain as dumb.
Yeah, where he goes home with 2 idols in his pocket. I mean, and then Eric comes back in fans versus favorites and ends up getting medevac. So I do feel bad and at Final Five nonetheless also. But yeah, I mean, Eric has definitely had quite the ride in Survivor. He is part of the dumbest move in Survivor history, and then he plays a really solid game when he comes back and gets medevac at Final Five. So what a story arc for him. But yeah, what a just incredible move here though by the Black Widow Brigade, the best alliance or one of the best alliances in history of Survivor, pulls off the best move in our opinion in the history of Survivor. So, you know, we ranked our top 20 and I'm curious to hear what people think. So I would like to see in comments what we left off, what should be higher, what should be lower. Like, I want to hear what people think. So send in the comments and we'll try and fill some time while you guys are commenting.
Yeah. So while people are putting in other moves to talk about, I mentioned Mike Holloway's move that Tanner mentioned earlier in the podcast, where basically he has immunity and he's going to give supposedly his idol to Shireen to bluff, and actually Tyler ends up getting 2 votes. So do you have any other comments about that bluff by Mike Holloway?
I'm trying to pull up the details here because I'm trying to, I'm just like trying to remember details of this move.
Yeah, but I think I think Shireen goes out at final 8, I believe. And Mike has immunity and they're all going to vote for Shireen because she's on the out. And I think Mike says, look, Shireen's voting for Tyler. I'm voting for one of the other of you. So to make sure it's not you going home, throw your vote on somebody else. And, I'm sorry, Tyler doesn't get 2 votes. I'm sorry. Basically, Dan gets 2 votes. Dan gets a vote from Tyler and Will.
So here's how it worked. Yeah, Mike and Shireen vote for Tyler. Will votes for Dan. Tyler votes for Dan.
Yeah.
And then the rest, for the other 4, Carolyn, Rodney, Sierra, and Dan vote for Shireen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Mike played a pretty phenomenal game. But
yeah, the only reason why, I guess to answer what Tanner's thinking, the reason why I didn't have it on the list for top 20 was because I think it was a great bluff and it showed that Mike has strategic chops past his physical game. But I feel like, it didn't keep Shireen in the game. He still lost an ally and he basically, his position didn't change. He was still in a bad spot. I mean, I know that Dan got 2 votes, so that alliance showed some cracks, and then Tyler goes home in the next vote, showing the cracks in the alliance. So and it was Russian roulette. I do think that it was exciting to TV, and it kind of led that alliance to crack, but Mike still was in the hot seat for the rest of the game. So I think it was a good move, but it didn't kind of like change his positioning.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ryan. Again, I think Mike's a very underrated winner. She should have been on Winners at War, but I would not put that in the top 20.
Any other moves from the comments that we should talk about for top moves or best moves in history?
Yeah, and if we don't get any other comments, if you're watching this not live, then be sure to throw everything in the comment section on YouTube, because we will be reading all those. And we, while we wait for some comments, so we don't have anything planned for next week yet. We will have a podcast next week for sure, but we have to decide what that is going to be. Maybe we'll leave it up to the fans again. Maybe we'll go right back into casting drafts. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. But, me and Ryan will discuss that. We'll reach out to the fans to see what you guys want to see next week, and we will definitely do that. But we have a comment right here. I think Michelle voting out Julia, her biggest ally, was a great move for her and ultimately helped her gain trust to get to the end. Then Ty not giving up his idol was good too, right? So when we spoke about Ty, we gave a little bit of credit to Aubry also, but Aubry convincing Ty to flip and then Ty not giving up his idol. That's part of the that's part of the same move. So we consider where do we have that ranked? We had that, I believe, at number 12. 13. We had that at number 13, right?
Yeah.
So that we all coupled into one. Now Michelle voting out Julia, her biggest ally. Now Michelle I would love to rewatch Kaoh Rong because I remember in real time I was like not that impressed with Michelle's game, probably because she was overshadowed by Aubry and then Ty was finding all those idols. But Michelle showed in Winners at War why she won that season. Like she's brilliant socially and an underrated strategist as well. So I mean, I agree with you that in this case, voting at Julia was a good move as well.
Yeah, I think in Survivor, I mean, Russell, when we talk to him, and he mentions this all the time, his game is that he sticks with his allies. He doesn't go back on them. He wants them to stay. But there are other strategies where you say, look, I need to understand when to cut my ally. I need to know when to cut my losses and move on. And I think Michelle does that really well here. I think Michelle realizes that Aubry does not want to work with Julia, and Michelle wants to move forward with the girls, Aubry and Sydney. And she says, like, look, Julia's perceived as a big threat. I'll vote her out here, and that will demonstrate my loyalty. And then in the next vote, Ty actually wants to get rid of Michelle, and Aubry and Sydney say, no, we're going to take out Jason instead. So I think that actually it was a very subtle move at him, but I think it allowed her to get into the girls' good graces, and Michelle managed to, cement her spot in that alliance. Yeah,
and we spoke about before, I believe it was with the Spencer voting at Fishbach move, getting into that inner circle just to advance herself further in the game is so important. And that's what Michelle did here, which was, and she ends up winning the game. So I agree that this is definitely a great move. All right. Cirie voting at her mom. We had discussions. So we had discussions about this. I think that this is so first of all, I want to say that voting out your mom is a great move. It's an extremely tough thing to do. And Tony spoke about this on his podcast with Rob Cesternino as well. Like when you're so close to somebody, like he completely refused to vote out even Sarah, who's not even family to him, just a very close friend, obviously. So to vote out your mom is extremely impressive. Now the reason why we don't have it ranked in the top 20 of moves is because Laura Moret was going home no matter what that episode, and she went along with the numbers in order to stay in that alliance. So I think that it's a great move, but it was not completely orchestrated by her. So that's really the reason we don't have it on here.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan sums it up. I don't have anything else to add other than I think if you're looking at this as a move or a moment, I think this is more of a moment. Like we will remember this where we see Laura, parentheses, mom. We're always going to remember that. So I think it's more of a TV moment rather than a great move because Laura's bags were already packed. But I think that it's a moment that we'll always remember.
Yeah, for sure. And top Survivor moments is something that we are considering doing a podcast on in the future, top moments. Like, so anything, maybe it could include moves, but it's more just like moments. Like, for example, like Cirie voting at her mom, or the Final Four fire making challenge in Winners at War. Like, that would be a Survivor moment. So that could be a future idea for a podcast. But any other comments about moves that we may have left out or stuff on the rankings? And if not, be sure to comment. I want to say that again. And I will plug us right now. Be sure to like this video. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Soul Survivor Pod. And while we're waiting for any last questions, if we do get.
Yeah, no, in the end, I thought this was a really fun podcast going over the best and top moves. I think it's always fun to debate whether people agree with us or disagree. I'm sure some people would agree with our top 10 or disagree, but I think that it allows for more discussion, which is always that's what we want from this podcast, is to have great fan interaction and great Survivor community interaction. So if we can just get that from people, and with obviously constructive feedback, that's all we really want.
Yeah, and be sure to like tweet at us or contact us if you have any great ideas for us for podcasts going forward, because it is going to be a long off season. And while we're going to do more casting drafts, like, I thought it was great to just take a few weeks of a break from that. So, all right. And we're going to wrap things up here. Thank you, Andrew, for saying good rankings. Thank you for that. But we will see everybody next Wednesday night. And I'm excited. We'll let everybody know as soon as possible, as soon as we decide what that topic is going to be, but I'm excited for it.
That's all we got for you now. Grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.